So welcome. We're so excited to present to you today about what your primary students can do. My name is Jessica Block. I am a kindergarten teacher at Westlake Charter in Natomas.
And I am Katie Sanchez, a first grade teacher at Westlake also.
So we're trying to get a feel for the room. What kind of grades do you teach at kindergarten teachers? First grade?
Second, third, TK. Ooh.
Awesome. And like instructional coaches or, okay.
Awesome. Cool.
So kind of a little overview of what we're going to do today. We're going to go through and give you tons of tips and tricks on how to even get started. We're going to talk about the pedagogical shift that needs to happen with our teachers and in our classrooms to get our primary students accessing the tech that everyone else is using at our schools. We're going to go over how to use those Google apps in our classroom. We're going to show you resources, student examples of things we're actually doing in our classrooms, and tons of templates today. And then at the end, we're going to kind of wrap it up with what are some best practices and kind of start to create a community of teachers who can go back to each other and say, hey, you tried that cool thing. Do you have a template for me to use? How can we get our kids using these things?
Awesome. So quick disclaimer for you guys. We are not going to have like a make and take session today. So our slides, we have 46 slides, 31 I counted last night, new ideas for you. So lots of templates, lots of pictures, lots of ideas. Feel free to click around, but we're not going to be like making anything together today. We're going to talk really fast because we have a lot to say. And then at the end, if you have any questions, you can feel free to chat with us or message us, whatever works for you. So a quick shout out to our friend Susan Stewart. 3 years ago now, we were sent down to the Los Angeles area to a conference called K2 Can2. We use technology in our classrooms, but after this conference, like our world was rocked. So everything has changed since then. We're able to kind of connect with people on Twitter, try new things, and we've had a ton of fun in the last couple of years.
So you're thinking to yourself, there's all these cool tech things, but my district says, my principal says, I have standards. You can't do tech stuff because you have to do these standards. So take a minute, turn to someone, and talk about, what tech standards can you know that are specifically called out in Common Core? Can you think of any where they're specifically calling out technology in our primary grades? So take a minute and see if you can come up with any of them.
Turn and talk.
So in our Common Core standards, they're specifically calling out using technology and digital media. In kindergarten, first grade, and second grade, one of our main ELA standards specifically calls out that students need to be using digital tools to publish their writing, and as early as kindergarten, and that is our ELA standard right there. They're all linked. We have scope and sequences. We have trajectories of introducing these things in as early as kindergarten. And we want to set up our older grade teachers for success. Katie and I kind of, when my students go to her class, she can immediately tell which students have been in my class because they've been able to use technology more often. And then also California is recommending that we adopt computer science standards next year. And these computer science standards start in kindergarten. So they have kindergarten, first grade, and second grade K2 standards for computer science that California is recommending that we adopt them. So that's going to include coding, it's going to include the problem solving and using those digital tools. So not only we have our regular standards, tech is specifically called out in our kindergarten, first and second grade standards.
So step one, let's log our kids in. This is one of the hardest things. It's not pretty. It's not easy. It's not going to be good the first time, not going to be good the second time, third time. Hopefully by like the sixth time, there's like 4 or 5 students in your class that are like, oh, I think I get this. I could probably help my neighbor. It's not easy,
No.
But they can do it. So there we go. It's not easy, but with practice, just like anything that any human does, they will get really good at it.
So it's a headache. So here are some tips and tricks. Christine Pinto is someone that we found on Twitter and are following her. And she says, hey, go out and get yourself some washi tape, some colored tape. You're going to add it to the rows of the sides of your Chromebook, just on the sides. And then you have these login cards. Again, we talked about stuff being heavily linked. All of these resources are there. She's created these conditionally formatted login cards. So when you type in the student's username and password, the colors of the cell changes to match the colors of your washi tape row. So when you give your students their login cards, they're not gonna hunt and peck over the entire keyboard to find the letter J. They're gonna go to the green row, because they see the tape on the side, and find the J. It cuts down on the amount of hunt and pecking that has to happen. Yeah?
I would give my life to have a login that easy. What do we do when her login is an email? Is there any-
So, well, I'll tell you, ours are email addresses too. This is just a sample one. So at our school, it does ours, when they log into Google, the end of it is Auto Atlas, like Charter is already pre-populated for them. Again, you can format the login card to have that piece. The other piece that we said is, hey, start assigning your Chromebooks and your computers to specific students. Katie and I are lucky enough to be at a school where we're both piloting one-to-one Chromebooks in our kindergarten and first grade classrooms. So we're able to assign individual computers. If you don't have individual computers to assign, assigning 3 or 4 students to one computer, so each time they're logging in, they're not having to type in that username part, they can find their icon and do their picture, and then just do the password part, so maybe that would cut down on some of that. We also talk about how we roll it out. We've linked a very basic presentation on what we show to our students with screenshots of what they're gonna see each time. We do it together on the carpet, go back to tables, do step 1, come back to the carpet, show you step 2, and lots of back and forth, lots of really stepping it forward, showing them lots of screenshots.
All right, so now you're in. What's next? What is next is those big questions that we get, right? And the same questions that we have. Once my student's in, how are they gonna find that website? They're never gonna be able to type in that huge website and be able to get there. We're gonna spend the entire learning time. Well, here is a Google drawing that I've created. It's called Learning Links. And all of kindergarten and first grade at this point are using this similar thing. So it's made on Google Drawings. Each picture is linked to that website. This is a living document, so I can go on my computer, I can change the image, I can link it. So this week we did a Kahoot, which we had never done before with this class. So I quickly went on and just made the link on there so they can easily jump onto that. You take that document from Google Drawing and you publish it on a Google site so students can access it. You can, the IT department can probably send it to the specific student
login.
Yeah, student login.
So
or you can do like a QR code. So they would log in, scan their QR code, this would pop up, and you're like, okay, once you're on your learning links, let's go to Google Classroom. So they're not typing in Google Classroom each time. This will save a lot of time.
And again, we put a link there on the specific one. Feel free to take ours and edit it for what you need.
Another question is, how will I get my students' attention when they have their computers? So right now, I see that most of your computers are green. Where are your eyes? On your screen. So when you're green, your eyes are on the screen. Students have full access to their computers. Their eyes are on the screen. You're not going to connect with them because their eyes are on the screen. Go ahead and just play with me for a second. Make your computer at about a 45-degree angle. You're at yellow right now. You're gonna have that 1 or 2 students who just can't help but lean over and try to see the screen, but they're just taking a little break. They're gonna take a break. I'm gonna give them a few more directions or checking in, or hey, we're about to clean up, here's a warning. And then they can easily open it back up. They're not logging out, they're just taking a quick break. Red is like shut down, closed, eyes are off of it. So this is an easy tool, like green on the screen, yellow, just take a break, and red is like shut it down. Super, super simple, but you're not gonna be able to get your students' attention when their eyes are on the screen.
So we're talking about what that pedagogical shift is. So our students have access to digital content around the clock. At home, they're passive consumers of that technology. They're watching videos, they're playing games, they're just passively getting all of that media. We want to take them from those passive consumers to creators of the digital content. Our primary students can and are creators of digital content in our classrooms. And so we want to really make sure that as teachers we know, hey, our K-2 students can also be the creators. It's not just the big kids who get to have the fun.
So we're going to start with Google Apps for Education. Google Apps is like the place to start. We want our students to be, what did we say? Consumers? No. Creators. This is where you want to start. So there's some things linked on here of how to get your Google Drive set up, your Google Classroom set up, but we're going to jump in to once you're in, what are your students doing with these apps? So if you haven't logged in and you haven't gotten started with Google Apps for Education, that is the starting place. You will connect directly to those 4 C's. Students will be collaborating, working together, and creating, and that's what we want to see. So the first one here, thinking back to our standards, that first standard we talked about was publishing digitally. So these students hand wrote all of their work. They're studying Octopus, so they wrote out their sentences, and then they logged onto a Google Doc. Google Docs is just like a Microsoft Word where they're just typing their information. So here's the final product. It's not perfect, it's not pretty, but they were able to do it. They published their writing, and seeing that printed is like a game changer. They're like, oh my gosh, like I did that, that's amazing.
So Google Slides is my favorite. I use it for everything. Primary teachers, how many worksheets do you have where you give them something and you're gonna say you're gonna cut out the pictures and you're gonna sort them into the categories, and you end up with 1,000 pieces of paper of confetti all over your floor, and some kid has lost their cat and you don't know what to do and they're crying. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna teach them how to do that same sort of activity on a Google slide. I teach my students Mountain, magnifying glass, Google, insert. So the students go to Mountain, magnifying glass, type in cat, click insert, and then they have a picture of a cat in there. This is my students' work. I took my UG-UG phonics lesson, and I wanted to see who was getting it and who wasn't. They used those skills they learned in Google Docs to type in the words for the UG word family. They went to Mountain, magnifying glass, Google, and were able to find the pictures, insert the pictures. This is their final presentation. Some students ended up with 2 slides. Some were 6, 8, 10 slides. They asked to do this later on. They said, when we learned a new word family, oh, can I make a Google Slides on this word family? Yes, of course, because now you know those skills. And they get so excited that they're finding real pictures that they have a connection to, because they found it, and they get to pick which bug they wanted or which slug they wanted.
So the next level of this, using Google Slides, we made animal brochures. So again, we're digitally publishing. We're using that adding photo skill. We are now changing fonts. So we did a bunch of research. Students used online sources, books from the library. We chose animals. We did research. I gave them the categories that they needed. And this was over like several weeks of work. They published their writing, and then they were able to type in their writing. They changed the fonts, they added pictures, and when we printed them out, it was an awesome display. It was like groundbreaking at open house. Students were so proud of themselves, and parents were like, there's no way my kid did this. I'm like, yes, that's your student. Like, I didn't change anything about it. I sent out that template to them, and that's kind of where they got started. You can use it a couple different ways, but this was just totally student-made and a first grade. So it is possible.
So we are a school that has adopted Project GLAD. If you know anything about Project GLAD, it's tons of charts and paper and stuff all over your walls. If you don't use Project GLAD, I'm sure you have anchor charts or things in your classroom that sometimes stuff goes up on our wall and then it becomes invisible to students because it's been there so long. So this, using Google Slides, I wanted to get them another touch at this information. So I took just a regular pictorial input chart from Project GLAD, and what I did is I created a Google Slides template. I pushed it out to them through Google Classroom. It was color-coded because Project GLAD really emphasizes on the color coding. And so they knew on the the orange one, they went to the orange part of my anchor chart, my pictorial input chart, and they took those bullet points that we had talked about and done in class. They wrote their own sentences, they found their own pictures, and they were able to publish their own mind map of the graphic organizer and I was able to quickly see which students knew what the needs of plants and animals are, in this case an animal, one of our standards, what are the needs of plants and animals? And they were able to describe it as the description and adaptation, habitats and needs. And so I was able to then get them to touch that content in another way. You see that's them, they're working together. Those are my kids working together on it. You know, they're all huddled around it, but you see the engagement level. If I ask them to just talk about or tell me about, you know, they may not get everyone involved, but when I can see them all working together, I know that I'm hitting those 4 C's, but also getting able to have them access that content.
Same thing here. So this is another Project GLAD strategy. We're talking about the astronomer. So I used Google Drawings, and we just had some drag and drop practice. So again, they're color coded, and students had to find the words and drag them to that category. It's just a second touch of the information. They're recreating the same graphic organizer, but then they really understand like what those different categories are and where that information goes. So the next is the final product, and that was also sent out through Google Classroom, and then I was able to go on my Google Classroom and kind of see where students were, which was super helpful. At our school, side note, we do NWEA testing, so as early as kindergarten, they have to be doing these tests on the computer. So practice like this makes a huge difference in their scores because they've done it before. And then obviously as they get older in 3rd grade, they have the SBAC testing, and if they already know how to use a computer, it's going to make a huge difference.
So we've all kind of done those thematic color by number, color by answer, you know, problems and worksheets, and you get them and you get the student who they're coloring along and they color it the wrong color. You tell I teach kindergarten because I'm always like the kids who melt down because they made one mistake. So how can I take that same thing, get them to practice those addition and subtraction fluency skills, which again is another one of our standards. So I took a Google Sheet. I didn't make this Google Sheet. Alice Keeler says the answer to all problems is always a spreadsheet. Spreadsheets are going to help us, you know, with college and career skills. How to navigate within a spreadsheet. It's an important life skill. So I took her conditionally formatted spreadsheet. I added in some addition and subtraction skills, facts that they had been practicing in class. The students then click on the box, and as they change, as they input the answer, the conditional formatting changes the color of it. So now the students are going along and they're changing the colors and they're feeling really good. A picture is starting to appear. As they do it and they do it wrong and they get the wrong answer, the student automatically goes, oh, I got it wrong. I know because the bear doesn't have a yellow spot, so let me go back and fix it. As they fix it, they start to go and they realize that they can fill in the whole problem and get the completed picture. And now they're really excited because they made the picture correctly. But little did they know they were practicing those addition and subtraction skills that I needed them to practice. We start with our buddies. Sometimes that's a great place to start. Start with your older buddies. But once they do it a couple times with their buddies, they are experts at it.
Another piece from Google Sheets, we found this again from Christina Pinto. One of the standards in 1st grade is data collection and graphing. So on a Google Sheet, there's inserted a Google drawing. They double click on the Google drawing. They open up and then they ask their classmates, what's your favorite insect? They're practicing making tally marks. So they've collected their data. Then they go to the next page of the Google Sheet down at the bottom, and it's conditionally formatted, so when they type in the numbers, it builds out the graph for them. They're able to take that graph and analyze it just like they would if they were to be coloring it in. Then back on the first slide down below, there's just like some questions where they can type in, what do you notice about this? What animal was the most popular? How many people voted for ladybugs or whatever?
Logistics question.
Yeah.
Did they carry their little Chromebooks around to get all the tally marks from their classmates?
I don't let my students carry them open. Yeah. So they're set up at their desk and then they go ask, hey, what's your favorite insect? This, or this? And you're like, oh, ladybug, okay. And then I go back to my seat and I tally it. It takes some time, but they're working together. You could do it in teams, so they're building it together. It was pretty cool to see in action, because we had done it on paper a few times, and when they did it this way, it was like, oh, I already know how to collect data and analyze my data.
And again, a lot of these things, don't go out and recreate the wheel. Don't go out and have to start and go, wait, how do I insert a Google drawing into a sheet, into it? These things are already out there. If you don't want it to be bugs or insects, then change it to whatever fits what you need. But these templates, again, we link them in here for you. Use these templates. Don't start from scratch. You will kill yourself trying to create all of these things from scratch. There's so much out there.
All right, so we've gone over the 3 most commonly used Google Apps for Education tools. We've talked about Google Docs, Google Sheets, and Google Slides. Just take a couple seconds, talk to your neighbor. What things do you think you could try in your classroom? And then what other ideas do you have? So I know it's a ton of information. Just try to process it a little bit with a neighbor.
I mean, there's tons of things that they could do.
I think it's super important to build in that process time, because I hope that no one in this room is like, oh my gosh, how do I appropriately leave this room quickly? But just think about it. Know that I hope today that you leave with like one nugget, one idea that you can go try. Don't feel like you need to do all the things.
So another thing that we try to do with our primary students, with all our students, is create globally aware students. We want them to start to think about the bigger world other than just themselves. So in kindergarten, we have a Holidays Around the World unit where we talk about different countries and track our gingerbread man across the globe. So what I've done is created a Google My Map, added pins to the places that I know we're going to go. On each pin, I can then connect videos, pictures, whatever the digital content that I have for that country. As a teacher, it's a great place for me to organize all my stuff so I don't have to remember, oh wait, we watched that video last year. They're right there on my map. The yellow line comes as we go to each place, so they don't know where we're going next. We can add it in as we go. I also use, just Google Earth. Sometimes when you're reading a book, we read My Name is Alice, went to 26 different places around the globe. So every time we went to a new place, we used Google Earth and we flew there, and the kids are so excited. But I'm then able to get those social studies standards of talking about community types. Does this look like an urban community or a rural community? How can we tell by what we saw? So just by adding in those things using Google Earth is a great way to just add in some of those things. So this one, I just did whole class, but it was just a great way for them to kind of see that. The My Maps, if you create them through, with the My Maps, you can push that out through Google Classroom. Also, there's Google Lit Trips, which are based on books. There's mostly are for the older grade students, so they can individually access the content. But for the younger kids, I don't go that way, quite yet.
All right. Another one of my favorites is Google Forms. I'm sure you guys have all seen graphic organizers similar to this. I use them. We are talking about story elements. So who are the characters in the story? Where are you in the story? First, next, and last. What's happening in your story? So we had been going over this as a class. Then we started doing it independently on the books they were reading. As a whole class, we read Pete the Cat's Train Trip. Pete the Cat is amazing. And then we jumped onto Google Forms. So I was able to, again, send this out through Google Classroom. Students logged in. The first page is like, hey, do you like this story? And they're like, wait a second, we read Pete the Cat and now we're looking at emojis, like this is the best day ever. Then the next page is, who are the characters in this story? So now they're working, they're telling me what they know. I listed all kinds of different characters that were in that story and different stories. I'm just talking about this book in particular. The great thing about Google Forms is you can kind of vary the question. So this is a multiple choice. You can do short answers. The next piece is the plot. So what and how, what's happening in our story. Their typing's not perfect, but they're able to tell me, first, Pete the Cat gets on the train. Next, Pete the Cat gets a tour by the conductor. And last, Pete gets off of the train and visits Grandma. So they're able to type that out for me. The last piece is the setting. And so I put in pictures of Pete the Cat from all of the different Pete the Cat books. And again, they're just clicking on the ones that they did see in that book.
And so in kindergarten, a lot of the times I'll just use just pictures. And that, and they're just choosing, right. And you're just, so that's the nice part about Google Forms is you can vary the question type. And so make it all picture ones.
Google Forms is great for like surveys for families and stuff like that, but knowing that your students can use them as well is awesome. So next level, on your Google form, there's a small little green box. And when you click on that green box, all of your information, all of your data that your students gave you creates a Google Sheet. So all of my data is in one place that I can look at. I open that up and I can quickly assess like, oh, this student, they clicked on all the wrong characters. Like, I don't know that they really understand what we're doing here. But I can also, I took all of their names out and I put it on the big screen and I'm like, hey, let's talk about this. 22 of us responded. We all said different things about where the setting was. Let's talk about setting again. So as a whole class, we're kind of reviewing what we did independently.
So Google Photos is great. We might use it personally, but how can we use it with our students in our classrooms? We go on field lessons and we take our iPads on the field lessons. And we turn our students from, you know, those just passive consumers of a field lesson into active participants in it, because they're taking pictures of what they're learning. So when we go back to the classroom and we put those into our Google Photos, the students can go back and go, hey, remember when we saw the goat and we saw the eyes like you were talking about, Mrs. Block? And I'm like, yes, look, we have pictures that we took, and their investment and engagement goes way up because they were the biologists, and now they're really able to be empowered to say, wait, I did see that, and this is how I'm gonna then use it.
All right, we've given you a ton of information. Let's do like a little checkup from the neck up. Give me a fist at 5. 5 is like, this is awesome. I'm taking everything you're doing. I'm ready to present with you. Like, let's rock. 3 is like, I think that there's 1 or 2 things that you've said today that I can't wait to try, and I'm super interested because I can see it's happening. And 1 is like, I'm ready to go red on my computer and exit. How are you guys feeling? 5, 4, 3, 2. Cool. That feels good. Awesome.
All right. It's the lightning round. We've kind of gone over those Google apps. We've kind of showed you how they're going to be those creators with Google. So now we're going to go through some of those other digital platforms, and we're going to go really quickly. We're not going to try to sell you on any of them today. There's lots of great sessions on some of them here. But how are our students in primary grades using some of these, and how are we actually using them with our students?
So Flipgrid is a great tool. One of the setups is free. Students log in, and it's a great way to have students make videos. So think about your students in our primary grades. One of our standards is counting to 120, right, in first grade. 1, 2, you could spend all day, all night listening to your students, but what if they logged in and they made a little video of themselves? You got home and you're sitting on the couch at home and you can quickly go through and say, okay, this student gets it, this student doesn't get it, this student's almost there, they're missing a few numbers. So you can collect your information and bring it and have it in like a database. Another way that we've used this, so these are students, when they're done making their video, they can add like emojis to it, which is super fun. They get crazy with it. The interface is super simple for them. You just give them a specific assignment, and then they log in, and you can make QR codes with Flipgrid. They just make the QR codes for you so students can get to Flipgrid, scan their code, and then get on. So it's super, super simple for them to access. Here's a couple of videos. So some students, last year we were talking about light waves and sound waves, and I said, tell me about opaque light waves. And the student is telling me all that they know about light waves. And it's super fun for them to share with each other. They're on camera. Sometimes if we have extra time, I'll put it on the big screen and we'll watch each other. The friendly interviews is a speaking and listening skill. So they're able to interview a classmate and then read it out loud with both of them in the frame. Those can quickly turn into QR codes as well. Lots of questions, yes?
Just a quick question with Flipgrid as far as how do you combat the just noise level of the classroom in the videos? Because that's one of the things I found we struggled with all the background noise in the videos.
So the one right here, the light waves, is in a busy classroom, and you can tell, but you can also have a couple students do it at a time. Maybe it's like a station thing, where there's 5 of them at a station working on it, but for the most part, it gets noisy, it gets exciting, but I can always like still hear what they're saying.
Yeah. And for a lot of them, we're not I'm not using this as like a published work or an open house project. A lot of it are for those count to 100 ones save me so much time that 23 kids can count to 100 and I can listen to it later, and it saves me so much time. The other part is then you can download the videos. So if you do have a really great one that you want to use, the nice part is I had a student who was really struggling and we had a lot of interventions in place. I was able to download the videos, attach it into his file. So throughout the year, we were able to have data as opposed to me just saying he could count to 12. I was now able to see how he was actually able to count and how that changed through the year. So about those QR codes, if you don't know how to make them, they are kind of life-changing for me. There's a great one that we use there. So what I do is I create theme pages. So I take, we're learning about people who make a difference. So I find my videos, my read-alouds, any text I want them to be able to interact with. I make a QR code of the link to that video or the link to that read-aloud. And then those are at my center. So I have, ones, they just sit at their center. They use their Chromebook or their iPad to scan it. And they are quickly, immediately at the content that I want them to be interacting with. They like it, they get to choose, but I know that they're getting some extra touches with some of the content that I want them to have. You see there's a student who's just, he got to choose all about what it's like on a pig farm, and that was an easy way that at a center I can do it. These are one of my favorite centers to do. So we also use QR codes a lot for those published videos and things at open house and things like that. We created a student work and we turn it into part of their art project. And so when the parents come, they get to watch the videos of them doing it, using chatter pics, creating your video of that, and then attaching it to your art project, things like that. So QR codes are a great way to just get people, but especially our K2 students, quickly to the content we want them to get to.
Green screens are awesome. Using the Do Ink app, you can transport your students anywhere with a click of a button. So all you need is something green. I have green fabric. We were just checking out a session and they literally use green paper. So just anything green needs to be in the background. Students take a picture in front of it. You're able to put any picture in the background and any picture in the front. We were talking about life long ago. We dressed up students. The next day they came in, their pictures are printed, they're on covered wagons, and they're like, wait a second, I need to know more about this as an introduction to the new lesson.
So Class Dojo, you may or may not have heard of it, is definitely, has a behavior parent communication piece to it. Not talking about that piece. The piece that I am obsessed with is the portfolios. So you have your students doing whiteboard, work, and they're doing those quick checks, and you're getting those quick checks. But if I use my my Class Dojo portfolio as a whiteboard, I put up an image on the screen of a 5-frame, and I said, hey, show me how you see it. Explain your brain to me. They were able to then annotate right on top of it and show it to me. I was able to quickly then see who was getting it and who wasn't. The video below, it's super quick if you want to watch it, but the student took the picture, chose his own objects from the classroom, took pictures of it, annotated on top of it to show me how he saw it, and then added a voice recording of him using his math vocabulary to describe his picture. Again, it was a quick 5-second video that he took, but I was able to then share it with parents so they saw what we were doing in class, and for me to then go back and get that quick check. The other day, we're wanting them to use those math vocabulary and actually be invested in talking about greater than or less than, and your math books may not have pictures that are really that engaging to students. So at home, I said, go home, take a picture of some images at home, take toys, whatever. Send it to me on Class Dojo. I dropped those into a Google Slides, and next day our math talk was on fire because the kids wanted to talk about their toys using greater than, less than, equal to. All simply by just take a picture, send it to me, and now their engagement has increased.
Coding is what's happening. So coding connects to those 4 C's again. We're teaching students to be 21st century learners, critical thinking skills. Little plug, we're going to be doing a coding session later today at 1:40, playing with some Ozo bots and some B bots, so please come check it out. But we have been using these and we can directly connect it to what we're learning in the classroom. I know that we were talking about traveling on the map, and so I gave them a map and they were able to draw lines from specific places. But there's engagement is out of control, and it's kind of just where we're at. So we live in a digital age, and we need to just embrace it and teach our kids how to use these tools and think critically.
So Breakout EDU, we do that with our little kids. You might have heard teachers at your school, oh, we did a breakout today. Our K2 students can do Breakout EDU as well. We start out with our buddies. Again, that's another great tip of like, start out with your buddies, get them to help you. But then we can move to small group or whole class. We've linked a great presentation from last year's CapCUE Tech Fest on how to just do breakout and all that stuff. But again, it's possible. Don't be scared of but my kids can't handle it. They can do it. Our kids did it. These are our smiling faces.
I think this is our last little plug, but Kahoot is a website, so they're able to take a quiz, and it's a super fun game for the students. They're like, when are we going to do another Kahoot game? I'm like, you mean a quiz? So the great thing about Kahoot is that there are a ton of resources on there, so teachers have made quizzes. I typed in their addition for first graders, and it pops up with a quiz. I didn't make it, but I can quickly get my students logged in with a couple code, it's like 3 or 4 letters and numbers. They get on there. It's color-coded with shapes. They see it on the big screen. They see the problem. They see the 4 different options for multiple choice on their screen. So if you're having them in partners with their iPads, or they can use their Chromebooks, they can access it. And they're quickly showing up on the screen who's on the leaderboard, who went the fastest, who got the most correct. But they're super engaged. And my students literally would like to do one every day.
Every day, right. So at our school, we are lucky to have some paid apps that our school has purchased for us. But I heard for years from other colleagues, yeah, our school has a subscription to that, but there's no way my kids can do that. They can't access it. They can. And so 2 of our favorites, Freckle, which used to be called Front Row, and Raz Kids, have both made the login process for our K2 students easy with QR codes or picture apps. So don't be afraid of if your school has purchased something, there's probably a way for your younger students to be able to access it.
All right, we have a few more minutes. This is the next level. Buckle up. Buckle up with us. We're going to connect a few different things. So this is from one of my colleagues, Maureen Weiner. She's in the room. And we created a Google form. So students were able to talk about their favorite book. And then from there, they created that Google Sheet. Remember the green button that creates your sheet for you. Using Autocrat, which is an add-on for your Google, it's able to create and auto-populate your paragraph. So students created their first paragraph of writing about their favorite book. I brought one of my book examples here. I added their personal pictures in there. They wrote that, and they were so excited to write about their favorite book and tell me the reasons why. So connecting all of those different Google tools, it's pretty magical.
So sometimes we talked about how are we going to get our students to that content. So we can take a regular Google Doc and we can turn it into a hyperdoc simply by linking all of your favorite content to it. Just like those theme pages, a hyperdoc is then going to be able to, students can read about something, watch a video on it, then take a form on it at the end. So hyperdocs are, again, something that our younger students can still access.
On that last page down in the notes, there's 2 different people who have a ton of resources already made. So I very rarely make my own hyperdoc. I can quickly find things that have already been made. Got it. We're towards the end, but we cannot let you guys leave without talking about digital citizenship. If you are letting your students use technology, you need to teach them how to use technology. So we use a word called techspectations, which are technology rules. We have them listed in the classroom. I quickly review them every single time that we use our computers. If they're not following our techspectations, then I'm going to have them do a reflection form and take a break. Mom and dad know that they had to do a reflection form. And then another resource that we like to use is Common Sense Media. They have some great tools on there, videos, lessons that are already laid out for you, but we need to be teaching our students how to use technology if we're going to be allowing them to.
So again, we've said it multiple times. Twitter is full of inspiration. Twitter is not a social media platform. I mean, it is, but for me, it's not, a personal one. It is a professional learning connection that I make. If you search hashtag K2Can2, the number of things that you'll see primary teachers like you doing will blow your mind. We didn't create everything in this presentation. There is so much stuff that we're using. We're building a community. That Susan Stewart and Christina Pinto, who we mentioned multiple times, are doing some amazing stuff. Don't kill yourself making things from scratch before you think, ooh, how can I get my students to learn about community? I wonder if there's a hyperdoc on community. Search Twitter. It's an excellent professional learning place to go and get so many of these ideas.
So we just want to say thank you. I know we've been talking a lot and you're probably like, whoa, but that was our hope for today. I hope that there's one or two things that you're like, I could probably try that next week in my classroom. On here, we also have connected a sharing resource, which is going to bring us to a Google Sheet.
Mm-hmm. And that's the thing we wanted to say, like, if you try something, if you go out and you're like, oh, I'm going to try that, send it out on Twitter. Like we already said, it's a place for us to learn and grow from each other. If you try something and you're like, wow, this really worked, let me share a template I found, even if it's not one you created, this link will be active so we can continue the conversation after today. So we just put a couple up here that were from our presentation. We would love to see this become something that you share with other people on your side. So like, hey, this person down the hall did something really cool. Let me go to this resource. Again, it is just a chance for us to start opening that communication of how we as a group can help our K2 students access kind of all this stuff. But again, like, tag us anything. If you have questions, if you're like, you went really fast to that part, I need some help, please reach out to us. Our emails are there. We're very, very happy to help or talk you through or send like, hey, the only way I learned how to do this was through this video that I watched, so here's a link to that video, because some of this stuff was like, I don't know how to do that. What is conditionally formatted? I don't know how to do that. And so there's, we all are going to at a place where we need to just work together to make sure that our students are starting to, make that shift into the creators and not just consumers of our digital content.
Awesome. The last slide, you want to click it?
Oh, yeah.
It's just like a generic feedback, but we're super excited to have you guys here at CapCUE, and hope you had fun.
Yeah.
Have a great day.
Yeah, thank you.
Woo! Thank you.